As many of you know, Ivan Allen Jr. was the mayor of the city of Atlanta from 1962 to 1970. He accomplished many things during his time as mayor, but is best remembered for his courage, his compassion, and his conviction in leading the city of Atlanta during the height of the civil rights movement. In this role, he helped to create and guide the culture of Atlanta and the South on its journey to a society that embraces social acceptance and equality. He made a lasting difference, and we're proud to claim him as a Georgia Tech alumnus. We're also proud to claim former President Jimmy Carter as an alumnus. Before graduating from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1946, he spent his freshman year here at Georgia Tech. And he's often quoted as saying that Tech was much more difficult academically than I thought it would be. President Carter, you'll be interested to know that I hear that often. Rosalynn Carter graduated from Georgia Southwestern College in Americus, Georgia. When they married in 1946, I suspect that few dreamed of the impact that they would have on the lives of so many, and who, throughout their 70-year marriage, would change the world. After 7 years in the Navy, the Carters returned to Plains to manage the family peanut business after President Carter's father passed away. Mrs. Carter assumed financial management of the agribusiness while raising 4 sons and a daughter. Once her husband was elected governor of Georgia, Mrs. Carter began her work to overhaul the state of Georgia's mental health system. She oversaw the initiation of reforms and served as honorary chair of the Georgia Special Olympics from 1971 to 1975. And when then Governor Carter decided to run for president, Mrs. Carter campaigned for more than 2 years, traveling throughout the U.S. She became the first candidate's spouse to declare a campaign promise of her own. Her promise was to guide legislation reform to help the mentally ill. And true to form, once President Carter was elected and took office, she kept her campaign promise. In 1977, Ms. Carter served as the active honorary chair of the President's Commission on Mental Health. And after extensive research, the commission issued written recommendations for the most sweeping reforms in mental health legislation in almost 30 years. Based on those recommendations, the Carter administration submitted the Mental Health Systems Act, and Ms. Carter testified before the Senate Subcommittee on Health in May of 1979. The legislation was passed and funded in September of 1980. President Carter also engaged the First Lady in international relations. She visited Jamaica, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, Colombia, and Venezuela as the President's personal representative, holding meetings with policy leaders. President Carter's foreign policy had its cornerstone in human rights, a commitment he has embraced throughout his entire life. He's known throughout the world for his successful mediation of the Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt, which led to the historic peace treaty. Throughout their lives, the Carters have built a legacy of unparalleled humanitarianism through the Habitat for Humanity. As well, the Carter Center promotes human rights and alleviates suffering throughout the world. For many of his works, President Carter was recognized with the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. For more than 4 decades, the Carters, through their center, have worked together to improve global health and human rights, as well as to promote democracy in more than 65 countries throughout the world. Looking beyond the safe and convenient, they've traveled to dangerous places and fearlessly confronted injustice. Their shared vision, tenacity, and courage have resulted in conflict resolution between countries and rival groups, advancements in mental health understanding and support, and the eradication of diseases in the developing world. In 2012, the recipient of the Ivan Allen Jr. Prize for Social Courage was Dr. William Fagey, who I introduced earlier. Dr. Fagey was a strategic leader in the successful campaign to eradicate smallpox in 1980. He joined the Carter Center in 1986 as its executive director and has worked alongside the Carters in the battle to eradicate guinea worm disease. In the mid-1980s, this painful disease afflicted more than 3.5 million people every year in 21 countries across Africa and Asia. Through the efforts of the Carters and others, in 2016, there were only 25 human cases of the illness reported worldwide. And last month, the Carter Center announced that it is poised to wipe out the guinea worm disease from the planet in the very near future. And that is a powerful partnership. At this time, I'd like to ask the Carters to please join me on the stage. Today, I've shared with you only a few of the highlights of the many things the Carters have accomplished together. And it seems appropriate that this, our first Ivan Allen Jr. Award for Social Courage, to be presented to a couple, be awarded to President and Mrs. Carter. Together, the Carters exemplify the far-reaching global changes that are possible through a lifetime of partnership and courage. Thank you both for being here today with us to accept this award. President Carter.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me say what a great honor this is. I was overwhelmed with emotion when the choir sang Imagine. I've been to Cuba several times, but when we heard the jazz compositions in Cuba, the best ones, and the top of the symphony orchestra capabilities, the theme song seems to be Imagine for the national anthem down there. And so that brought back fond memories to me. Also, I'm overwhelmed with emotion for coming back to Georgia Tech, where I was a student in my sophomore year, not my freshman year, by the way. And I went from here, I was in the Naval ROTC here, and then went on to the Naval Academy. While I was in the White House, the legislature passed a special law to permit Georgia Tech or any American university to give an honorary doctorate to a participant in their student body who later became President of the United States of America. So I came back down and gave a graduation speech at Georgia Tech and received an honorary doctorate, which was a free speaker for Georgia Tech. I realized that, but a great honor for me as well. It's a pleasure always to even be associated in any way with Ivan Allen Jr. We've been close to the family for a long time. His son, Ivan Allen III, was one of the most close and personal friends I've ever had, and helped the Carter Center get started. And so we have another memory here. As a matter of fact, the first night that Rose and I ever spent together was here in the Biltmore Hotel. So we spent our honeymoon night here. "70.5 years ago. And I remember, the only thing I remember specifically about the next day was we got up and got in my daddy's borrowed a car. It was right after the Second World War. And we drove about 1 block and had a collision. We ran right head on into another car. and almost completely destroyed the other car. It did hurt my daddy's car, but Daddy had to pay the bill. So that was the aftermath of our honeymoon night. That's as far in that story as I'm going. Well, I was asked this morning a question about how was it that when I was on the school board in Sumter County, I was chairman, as a matter of fact, before I ran for my first office. How was it that Georgia didn't follow in the path of Alabama and Arkansas and Mississippi and others in opposing the Supreme Court ruling that schools should be integrated? And my quick answer, the one I always give, was that Ralph McGill and Gene Peterson and Ivan Allen Jr. set such a sterling example in Atlanta with great political courage that it made it almost mandatory that the rest of the state go along with them. So I've always believed, and still do, of course, that Ivan Allen Jr. set an example that let Atlanta become what it is and to let Georgia become what it has been. And the end of racial segregation came about much earlier in the South and much more enthusiastically because of a namesake of this award, which I'm very grateful to receive. I may say that Ivan Allen Jr. and I had one thing in common in politics. We both ran against Lester Maddox. And I did it a little bit later for governor. He did it for mayor, and he prevailed. So we have a lot in common. And I'm at the table with some of his family, and I feel very close to them. So in every respect, my heart is with Georgia Tech, and particularly grateful to the Ivan Allen Jr. himself and to his family. And this award has a special meaning for me. And I want to thank Bud Peterson and all the others here for making it possible for us. Thank you very much. And now,
I want to thank you, President Peterson, excuse me. President Peterson and the whole Georgia Tech community for this recognition. It is a great honor for me, and especially to receive an award in the name of Mayor Ivan Allen Jr., for whom I had such great admiration. Living in South Georgia in the early civil rights days, with so much trouble and ugliness going on around us, and Jimmy named some of the states in the South where there were all kinds of problems. Mayor Allen was a beacon of light for Jimmy and for me and for so many others, actually in our whole country, for standing up for what was good and right at that period of time. And I was always very sorry that I didn't get to meet him. But I feel like I've gotten to know him through his family, who have carried on his tradition, his legacy of leadership and moral honor and moral ethics in this city. Thank you very much.
We'll take 4 quick pictures. Thank you.
Can you hold the trophy? Or?
Yes, yes. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. and Mrs. Inman and Mr. and Mrs. Glenn and Val to join me on the podium for a couple quick pictures. In closing, I want to thank you all for coming. The Ivan Allen Jr. Prize for Social Courage allows us to pause in our everyday life and celebrate some of the most courageous and selfless people in the world, to applaud people of vision who are committed to serving others, and to be inspired. Thank you for being here this afternoon, and congratulations to President and Mrs. Carter.